Namaskar and welcome to this exciting show, Sattology, Debunking Mythology. In this new episode, we have a very famous writer and a great friend of ours, Sri Rajat Mitra. We are going to talk about the psychology of protest against the cartoons. And some people may not like to say it, but that's what we're focusing on. And so let us welcome Rajat Mitra. Ji.
Namaskar.
Namaskar. So I saw your article on your website and it's a beautifully written article you sent. And initially I wanted to talk something else, but I thought that let's talk on this right now first.
Sure.
So what is the psychology of, first of all, we need to say, can aggressors be victims, or in what situation aggressor can be victims? In the last few weeks I've spoken a lot on Stockholm syndrome of Hindus. But today I want to just see how can aggressors claim victimhood. Getting right
Okay.
into the topic right away.
Sure. I think that is a very important topic, and I have worked with aggressors and perpetrators for a majority of my career as a psychologist. I worked in prisons. I worked with terrorists, people who committed homicide, assaulters, uh, mm, and even people who committed mass crimes. Then I worked in a human rights organization where I worked with, I won't say I worked with people, I interviewed them, met them where who committed mass crimes. And one thing about aggressors is that deep inside, they consider themselves victims. No aggressor sees himself as an aggressor. So all aggressors consider themselves victims. Like, for example, if we take them one of very famous example from history, Hitler, he considered himself a victim of the Jewish uh, plots and mechanizations. He considered German people the victims of that, right? Uh, if we see even other aggressors, they feel that they have been dominated, controlled, manipulated by the people whom they are right now committing atrocities against. So, therefore, that is how they can justify committing mass crimes or homicides against them. So, aggressors consider themselves victims at heart. And this is something that we need to know in working with them. So today, the people who are being aggressors towards us, if we talk to them, they consider themselves as victims of the situation, and they are trying to justify wrong through their actions. So, in that sense, they consider themselves victims. A victim in psychology is defined as who feels that he or she is being treated in an unfair manner. So, most of the aggressors of today, if you talk to them, they feel that what their opponents, their enemies are doing is unfair to them, and therefore they are the victims of it. I mean, they are imaginary victims, they are not real victims, but they feel total justification, therefore, in doing what they want to do.
It's a very remarkable thing that such a large mass of people can feel victim at the same time. It's just
Yeah.
unimaginable. What is the psychology behind that in a community? It's a community thing now.
Yeah, because it's based on an ideology. It is also it is not in a relation. It is not in a single relationship, but it is based upon on an ideology which is it is based upon a collective, which and there is it is also based upon a certain universality that they all share with each other. So therefore, it is important to see that it is no longer an individual aberration, but it is mass victimization when we have so many perpetrators together who are committing atrocities. But deep inside, if you ask them collectively, they feel themselves as victims, and this is something they feel universally. Like if you see like if you see what happened in Kashmir, the Kashmiri Muslims, they consider themselves the victims of Hindus. They're imaginary victims because if you see, they are the ones who control the economy. They are the ones who are in majority. They are the ones who have been dictating terms in politics, in every sphere. It is the Hindu there who walks away after seeing that if they are coming towards him, but they consider themselves as victims, in respect to the Hindus over there, and that is what they propagate to the world, that we are the victims of Hindus, and they do it in a organized manner, so which the world has also come to accept. But I feel that now it is something that is falling apart, and particularly Article 370 and 35A, with their abrogation, they are playing victims, but the world is not buying it this time from them. That is what I see happening at the moment.
The problem with this kind of uh, my mindset is that it snatches away rights of a very civilized population who would have actually accommodated the aggressor. But
Yeah.
when you start crying foul and crying like a fox, then it happens the similar and equal and opposite reactions begins to unfold from the oppressed also. So what do you think, see any reality in that, or according to you, what is your analysis on that?
We don't see a similar reaction taking place at the moment. We see a similar reaction growing. I think for a long time, the in the situation, the oppressors of the Hindus, they had the upper hand. They like what you were talking, about the Stockholm syndrome. We a large section of us, in fact, the Hindu psyche as such, came itself to believe that what they were saying about us is true. That in fact we are the oppressors. In fact, we are the ones who have committed oppressive acts throughout the centuries, whether in terms of hurting Dalits, or whether in terms of hurting the Brahmanism. Numerous theories have been propounded, invented, in order to tell us that we are the oppressors, not the victims. And we had come to believe that. We grew up in school, our school textbooks were full of that. So when you grow up at the end of it, the feeling that average school child, particularly Hindu, has is that he feels very guilty. I have done so many wrongs. I'm the inheritor of a legacy which has done so many wrongs. So I should be ashamed of myself. And this cuts across the personality, almost splitting it up into half and letting it be like that. So it is something that the Hindu consciousness right now is changing, and we are no longer accepting that as blindly as we used to do.
That's so true, and I think you mentioned Kashmir to some extent. Kashmir has been mentioned in Mahabharata. It's an old
Sure,
Indian territory, and even Afghanistan and Pakistan also is a Hindu country because
sure,
very few Indians know, or some of them may be knowing if they after they watch this video, that Mahabharata was first spoken by Vaishampayan, and
yeah,
Vyasdev was listening to him in Takshashila, which was in the Keke Prant of Bharat. Keke was the place, same place which was established by Bharat. It was he was the son of the Bharat Keke dynasty, Keke kingdom. So very old connection. And why Hindus generally from India have given up the ownership of those lands just because of one imaginary land boundaries created by British. But it seems like most of the Hindus take the boundary line very seriously when most of the religious places lie on the other side of the boundary in Pakistan today and Afghanistan.
Yeah. Uh, the as we understand loss in psychiatry and psychology, the Hindu psyche has been dealing with the concept of loss, and we are so used to it that we have not started even evaluating that what we are losing are our religious places. And in fact, long ago, we shifted our uh, sense of loss of territory, of what belongs to us, as we internalized this as our it is something that is what we call natural or egocentric. So therefore you will see that we have continued to lose land till very recently, and it is only now that when we fought back when China attacked us, possibly was the first time in a history of almost 1000 years that we felt an ownership of the land that we have right now about ourselves. So continuously losing land and accepting that and not resisting that, it has become a part of our culture, a part of our psyche, and it is only now that we are resisting it at the moment. So, for example, we lost India into three parts. The Bharatvarsh we lost in Pakistan and Bangladesh. In fact, Nepal wanted to become a part of India. We
Burma
said
also.
no. Hmm?
Burma also.
Burma, yes, Burma
1948.
also. Sure. I was in Nepal 2 years back, and I was doing a workshop, and the people came over and the talk came to India Nepal relations. And one of them told me, हमें दुख इस बात का होता है कि आप हमारे से अपना संबंध नहीं समझ रहे हैं, आप लोग भूल गए हैं. तो मैंने कहा, I asked them what is that. They were talking about not having the connection, understanding the relationship, particularly we Indians not understanding. तो दे सेड दैट आपका और हमारा आपका रिश्ता जो है वो संबंधियों का है. हमने आपको अपनी लड़की दी है. We have given Sita to you, and you don't understand that what kind of a relationship that we consider you as. But it seems that you have forgotten that. That is why we wanted to be part of you. The same holds for Tibetans. I have been in Burma several times, and the Burmese also say that we consider ourselves Indians. And if we had, listened to that feeling that binds all of us as to how they feel themselves Indians, perhaps the history of the subcontinent would have been written, described very differently today. We have failed to realize this sense of loss that so many people around us they go through, who feel their connection, their roots to their motherland, whether in Nepal, Tibet, Burma, Afghanistan. We And it's because of that today India has shrunk to its present size, and we still feel constantly attacked on our land by our enemies, enemy nations like Pakistan or China, who feel that they can take us over, and we will not protest. That is a feeling that is changing right now.
No, very true. Very, very true. Because it is too much for a country to digest. So many losses collectively, and I'm glad they woke up at this time. Now, 1919, most of the Hindus in Afghanistan opposed the British Durand Line,
Yeah.
which separated Afghanistan from the British Empire during that time, because British could not fight them. So for them, the land had no value because it was not their land; they were in somebody else's land. So they accepted all agreements which were hurting them, or giving them a tough time in their trade activities from India. So they created a Durand Line, they created McMahon Line, and they also created India Burma partition. The Burma wanted to
Right.
join India in old times. It was known as Brahmadesh. And so British did not have an idea to rule a large country. They were used to ruling a country half the size of Maharashtra or probably
Yeah.
Maharashtra. But they were just used to ruling a small land. And they had severe problem with Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose rising up. And so they were becoming very weak after World War II because there were constant protests in India. And they never actually liked India to some extent. One or two people may have liked, but generally they never liked India. It was very rough climate for them. Now, in such hateful atmosphere, India was divided. And while going, they divided into 661 independent states. But I'm more shocked at Indians and particularly Hindus who are willingly accepting uh, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Burma and Afghanistan as independent countries. And that mindset has come in when people in those countries want to acquire more land from India for their own religious purposes. What is this mindset you talk about of Hindus now? Is it Stockholm syndrome? What is it?
Yes, it is Stockholm syndrome and I'll also say that we are a society in grief. Hindu society has been a society in grief for a long time, and grief is not an emotion. Grief is consists of many stages. The first stage of grief is what we call denial. Then comes protest and anger. Then comes longing, despair. Then comes fear. And then comes rationalization. And then comes forgiveness and rebonding. So grief has different stages. And just as individuals have stages of grief, societies also have stages of grief. And our society has been locked up in a denial for a long time. So therefore, we have not responded with protest as we are doing right now to the losses that we have undergone over centuries, over almost 1,000 years, right? We are moving from the stage of denial to the stage of protest and anger. And from, what happens is that from there we move on to the stage of fear that how do we survive on our own? And when that fear happens, very often we go back to very ancient, long, olden periods where we think of people who kept India together, who gave us the concept of India. And that is what we need to teach from to our school children, everyone, that what is this concept of Bharatvarsha? How did it come about? What binds us together? Because the way we read history, it creates fear in us that we cannot exist as a large nation. We have not been able to do so. We have not been able to rule ourselves for 1,000 years. We have almost forgotten that who was the last person who ruled us over, bound us together as a role model. There are no role models to attach to. I mean, if I give you a very similar example, uh, I suppose there is a person who's a schizophrenic and he has, say 35 years old, and he had a breakdown at the age of 15. So for 20 years, he has remained disturbed and abnormal. And I had such a person who I was treating, and he said, I have forgotten what it means to be normal because it was so long back. So that is also true of Hindu society. It was so long back that we don't have a connection to something positive, something courageous, something that can bind us together. And our history teaching, our teaching in schools does not give us that sense of unity, that sense of togetherness, that sense of inherent, bonding and attachment that would give us the courage to rise over the fear that has bound us for almost 1,000 years. So we are a society that we have to examine ourselves, see ourselves psychologically, and understand that how do we work through these feelings of fear, shame, and grief that has been the predominant emotions in our country's history. We have to teach history from the perspective of how to rise over these emotions. Like, for example, different countries, they teach history from different perspectives. Like Germany, for example, teaches its children history from the perspective that how the Germans should not create another Holocaust, how the Germans should not create another Second World War, right? In a similar way, we have to see that we have to teach our children the notion about what is the deep bonding that makes us together as a nation, the different attacks that have taken place on our psyche, the people who have tried to fragment us, and how to resist it and rise above it. So that has to be a very essential part of our education, our learning for our children at a mass level. And that's what I suggest. And I feel it very strongly that it is not happening the way it should. We are not changing our education system fast enough in order for our children to raise that as a collective force so that we understand that what we are protecting and what is our legacy.
I realized from my own children that beyond a certain age, a child needs freedom to think. And as psychologists, you must agree that they need the freedom to think. But generally, we have seen in many, and I'm not critical of all the families like that, but I'm only talking about some Indian American families because I'm not much connected with the Indian families. They treat their children with kid gloves for so long that the children remain children and don't grow up to be an adult. I don't know whether you'll agree with me or you understand where I'm saying. So, where the child needs to make an independent assessment and grow, and so what is that phenomena that we keep our children away from these serious topics, and we just want them to watch some Disney and just have fun, but we don't teach them any such serious thing. I've never seen a Hindu family like it used to happen that if you die for the country, it will be a great honor. Nowadays, parents want somebody else's kid to die, not theirs, and they still want to take care of this country or their country.
Yeah.
So, what is that phenomena you call it in psychology?
One is that for too long we are a survivor nation, and we have been also a slave nation. So, and we also did not have, I would say, any leader who really bound us together, who really collected us together. Yes, we protect our children. Yes, we I would say we overprotect them. We don't let them think as autonomous persons. In fact, maybe, I mean, I'm a parent too, and what you are saying rings a bell. When we lived abroad for several years, and when we came back to India, I had to get my daughter admitted in the school, and we went to the school. The principal interviewed her, and he asked her, "How often did the teacher give you dictation there?" She looked at me and said, "What is dictation?" He said, "You don't know what dictation is, then how did you study?" And what I told her is that where she studied outside, it was a international school, and she was asked to think for herself, to do her own things. And in India, as she now tells me, I see dictation everywhere. Parents dictate, teachers dictate, they tell us what to do. They stop us from thinking because we have a comfort zone from which we don't want to move out as long as we are in India. We protect our children, therefore, and we don't let them grow. And this is a mindset that, you know, stays very strongly I mean, I'm a professor too at a university, and I see my students who live a very protected existence. They want everything, many of them, to be given to them in a spoon feeding manner. I would say almost 75%. If you provoke them to think for themselves in the class, if you provoke them to do differently, it's a new experience for them. Large masses of professors in Indian universities still give dictations. They expect their students to mug up the definitions. But anything that lies in the creative zone where they have to think for themselves is something that is not done, or uh, as a result, we don't develop that. When we see that in other countries where we migrate, we do very well. And therefore, we also don't want to come back in most situations. And that is also the reason why there is such a brain drain that takes place. So, until and unless I believe that we change the education system here and make it question oriented, where we provoke our children to think for themselves and ask questions of their teachers, ask questions of what they are reading, I feel that we will not be able to change the system very well. That is the need of the hour.
You nailed it, Dr. Mitra. You nailed it. Because, see, most of the people, Americans have not made this country so strong without being a strong educational system. And most of
Yeah.
the Americans today, they don't send their kids to public schools or private schools. 30% of all the kids in the United States are doing private education in their homes. Homeschooling is a big phenomenon today for exactly the same reason, because the public schools and the private schools, they create employees or students who cannot teach. Now if you contrast that with the Indian old Gurukul system, was similar to that,
Right.
very parent oriented,
Sure.
and lot of practical experiences. Like for example, and I'll viewers, please forgive me. Again, I'm taking you back to Mahabharat, where Sandipani Muni ashram, Krishna was sent out to collect wood from the forest in the ashram, and so along with Sudama, and they were collecting wood from places. Now, that is a very looks very simple, innocuous exercise, but it is a very hard lesson also for the kids, because then they start interacting with the soil and the trees. And today when we look at some kids even in the United States, and these are the immigrant kids mostly, most of the times the strong faith is of the immigrants to attend to the public school because it is free, or the lower income bracket which is free. Now but for the child, that experience with the soil and the tree is a very unique experience. It builds up a personality and also a perspective of what is there. In
Sure.
India also, I see some kids, they are so disconnected with the land of India, so disconnected because they never experienced it, especially children living in the cities. What is
Yeah.
that? And this is what the parents are teaching them. Oh, you are overprotective, overprotective, over jealously guarding their children. And obviously there is a need to do a lot of crime against children too, so I totally agree with the parents there too. But still, some freedom we have to build in our minds, that our old Gurukul system gave a lot of freedom. So instead of copying
Sure.
the education system of the West, why not Indians come up with the education system of India, which is in the tradition?
Exactly. Sure. And the Gurukul system was where you learned from nature. The guru was only the facilitator. The
Correct.
guru was not someone who, was an authoritarian person who dictated to you.
Yeah,
And the guru was someone who helped you to surrender yourself to nature and derive your learning from what you were feeling. Learning was experiential in Gurukul.
that's right.
And the thing is that what Macaulay brought about, I mean, the Mughals left the education system by and large intact because it did not occur to them. But the British, they destroyed our education system because they realized that if they have to rule this country, and they have to create slaves of us mentally. So they destroyed the education system, the Gurukul system, in a big way. And since then, we have not recovered from it. And it is also that when the British left in 1947, I still find it difficult to say that only their leaving can be called as freedom or independence. But we did not build up our own Gurukul system, education system that would create a genuine sense of pride and courage in the Indian children. That is what is the need of the hour today. So, like today, if I see the children, my friends' children around me, if you if I see the nursery rhymes they learn, it is Baba Black Sheep, right? It is not a Hindi song. It is not a song of their mother tongue. The alienation starts from there itself. So if they, what are you learning? I'm learning ABCD. What are you, doing? I'm learning English nursery rhymes, Scottish nursery rhymes. Why haven't we changed it? I mean, it is something so sad that if we don't start with the children at that point itself, how will we expect that he will grow up and feel connected to his land, to his roots, to his motherland? We need to revise that. We need to change that urgently. Otherwise, I feel that we are, alienating many generations one after another.
No, absolutely true, and I think you said it very well. The another aspect which is missing, which is in a big way, is that every I would say that every Indian family wants to learn the ideals of Ram and Krishna, but they leave it. They have a very common thing: जब बड़े होंगे तब सीखेंगे. But they do not know the education starts at the age of 5. There is
Yeah,
no, and there is no surety that anybody will live. And I wish everybody would live very long. But the education starts at 5, not at 20.
sure.
By the time of
Exactly.
20, by the time of 20, the human mind is developed and it is less flexible to adopt new things.
Sure.
And as you grow older, you
Yeah.
go rigid. You don't grow
Yeah.
flexible.
Sure. And what I feel, and I can share with you an example. Last year, I was in USA, and I had gone to a temple, and there were some, children who had come to this temple. My host had taken me to visit there. She, the priest there, was talking to them about Hinduism, about Shiva, about Durga, and you could see the children. They were totally bored. They were not listening. And the priest introduced the my host. She knew the priest. She introduced me to him, and on learning that I'm a psychologist and I'm also interested in religion, he asked me that आप इनसे कुछ बोलना चाहेंगे. So I was taken aback. I was not ready for it. So I said, sure. And he said that you are a psychologist, and psychologists are valued very much. In USA, they have school psychologists, so they might like to listen to you. So I talked to them about the struggle of Hinduism, how Hindu kings fought, how we kept our religion alive. And I could notice that the kids' eyes started shining. They were talking, saying, we did not know all this. I said, do you know that, for example, temple after temple was destroyed? Do you know how many temples were destroyed? And I said, do you know what the priests did at that time? They jumped in the well very often with the deities to protect the deities, but they did not leave the temple and run away. You know that how, despite all the invasions and all the intellectual attacks on us, our religion has still survived. And I talked of the story of struggle, of even children who fought for it, children their age. I talked of, for example, Guru, Gobind Singh, his children. I said, this is the way children have fought for religion in India, their faith, what they believed in. So religion is something to fight for, and it is a lived reality. And when they went back, my host, she told me on the phone later that that priest was asked by the parents that when is that psychologist coming back again, because we would like our children. They went back home and they said we did not know this, and we did not know that Hinduism was so interesting. So there are two Hinduisms. One is the philosophical Hinduism. We are teaching more of that to our children, and there is also a Hinduism which has a story of survival, of struggle, of trying to keep itself alive in the midst of all these assaults. We need to tell that story. We need to teach that story to our children. I teach that to my daughter. I said, do you know that how, for example, in Kashmir, the priests they kept the religion alive for so long. They had a choice to convert and live there. 500,000 people had that choice, but they gave up their land. They ran away from it, and because the religion was more important for them. That's why they did not stay back. They stayed in camps. They struggled. They got many of them felt sexually assaulted. They died. They lived in camps surrounded by massive brick kilns, which gave them a lot of breathing problems. I said, "Do you know the struggle that they have gone through?" And then she was deeply interested, and she said, "I did not know all this." And we worked in Kashmiri refugee camps, on which my book is based, The Infidel Next Door. She said, I want to come with you and see the people. I want to see if I can do something with them and for them. Right. So, how do you produce that motivation, that spark in the children? Not by teaching abstract philosophy, but by making them realize that religion is something to live for, to die for. Religion is something to, feel that it's an integral part of your life, not something that you discuss in philosophy classrooms or classrooms on religion. No. So for other religions, very often I notice that the religion is a lived reality for them. Hinduism has been far deeper than that. And we have to retrieve that, we have to recover that and teach that to our children, why Hinduism is such a lived reality and has been so, and how we can bring that into the lives of our children.
Great points, Dr. Mitra, as usual. And viewers
Thank
who are
you.
watching this video, do join us and do go to Google search on rajatmitra.co.in, and you can access him directly over there. And when you get a chance, do subscribe and click the bell icon so that you can get the notification. We'll have these kind of lively discussions, but I would summarize this discussion one way, that it's time for Hindus to wake up, that most of the lands which are conquered by invaders were are still the lands of Hindus, because our temples, our Ramayana, Mahabharata is from there, right till you can say Kazakhstan is there. We have our lands, and Burma. These are all countries which are very closely connected. Treating them or forgetting about those lands as ours is as much a sin as to cry sin over the terrorism coming from those lands and don't do anything about it. So, with that, I'll end this show. And Rajat Mitraji, thank you so much as usual. A wonderful talk,
Dhanyavad.
very inspiring to me as well. So, we'll see you next. Namaskar.
Namaskar.